Hello and welcome back to another episode of That Inner Voice podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer McKenzie, the conscious living coach and owner of Unispirit Wellbeing. Welcome back. And today I'm excited. I'm welcoming Bon Collins to That Inner Voice podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's great that you're here, and I'm excited about the conversation that we're going to have about body neutrality. Is that
Yeah,
how you say
it
it?
is. Yeah, it is.
So, for those of you that are watching or listening, do not forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on every new episode. So, Bon, would you just like to share with the listeners and watchers who you are and what you do, firstly?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm Bon. That is my name, and I am a coach in the fitness industry. I work predominantly with people who maybe have tried every which way to get in shape and found themselves just feeling like they're not getting anywhere. And I kind of a little bit different in that I'm not all about you have to work out, you have to eat dust or whatever. I'm approaching it from a different different angle,
Yeah, love
from my own from my it's
it.
true there
Reminds
is.
me of that program. Just
Yes, exactly that. And I can, because, and then the reason I became a coach is I'd been through that myself over many years, and it was looking at it from a different angle that really changed everything for me. And I think there's a lot of change needed in the industry. And I can remember the days where I paid 70, 80 quid a week for packets of dust, essentially, in order to sustain myself, in the hope of fitting what I thought I needed to do. So I now support other people to understand we don't have to do that.
okay.
Yeah, that's my job.
Yes. Okay. So, what then kind of led you to do what you do now? Then.
So, I mean, COVID is the very short version. So, when COVID hit, unfortunately, I do have a bone disease. That means my immune system is suppressed with medication. So,
Right.
everybody else kind of ended up staying at home from like the end of March, wasn't it? Mid to end of March. There were those of us who actually had been told to stay at home a good fortnight before that by our consultants and what have you. And then spent the best part of 2 years stuck at home. And the job that I did before this, I interacted with lots of children, lots of people,
Mm.
and it wasn't necessarily something you could take online. So it really made me kind of step back and go, okay, what am I going to do? The thing I panicked most about at the start of the pandemic was being able to exercise, which was an alien thing for me, given I'd spent so many years avoiding it. For that to be my biggest concern was quite a shock.
Okay.
And yeah, like I literally was like crying because I'm not going to be able to go to a gym. How do I carry on?
Mm.
And that was, I was more likely to get hit with a hockey puck than actually hit one for many years, and there I was worried. So it made me think about, well, I'm not alone on my journey.
Mhm.
And although I hate journey is like such a, I think it's just so much broader than that, isn't it? It's life.
Yeah.
But like I also had been part of like online programs focused on fat loss itself. And
Mhm.
I say now, they taught me everything I needed to know about how not to be a coach for people who need that support. I'll say it quite openly. There are some big names out there that they are teaching everybody the opposite of what we need to be teaching them.
Mm.
And so when I started to think about, well, I love to nurture people and see them get the best out of themselves. It's not because I need to feel I've done that. I enjoy seeing people living their best life. That's what gives me joy. And I really enjoy exercise and fitness, but
Mm.
in a different way, maybe. I've learned that it's about what I enjoy doing, not what everyone else is doing.
Mm.
And I realized that had kind of brought me success in losing weight over time, but that had no longer been my primary concern. So I decided I was going to spend my time studying to qualify, and then obviously here I am.
Oh, fantastic. So I had a little look on your socials. I did a bit of stalking before I come. I saw pictures of you in a wheelchair.
Yes,
Can you
yep.
just
So
talk to me about that and your
yeah,
journey with that, if you will?
yeah. So in like my late 20s, early 30s, I started developing some problems with my joints and my bones. And it did reach the point where I couldn't walk anymore, and I did use a wheelchair and a frame. And nobody really knew at the time what was going on. And often with autoimmune conditions, it can take years and years to figure out exactly what it is because there's so many different ones and different things. One of the things I did experience a lot back then was that the level of discomfort and disability I was suffering very much got attributed to my weight. That was, and I know a lot of people do go through that.
Yeah.
I was told that it was likely I would not walk again. And I didn't really sit very well with me because I just,
Mm.
well, you wouldn't. No one would really accept that as their future.
Know what was going through your mind at the
No,
time, but
exactly.
yeah, but no
We're
shit,
here, but
it's horrible feeling.
exactly. And so, like, facing this idea, because ultimately, I think when people have disabilities, it's not what is physically wrong with them or neurologically wrong that disables them. It's very much environment and people's perception of that disables them. I very strongly believe that. And so, like, I worked really hard. So I'd been on lots of different medications, trying to get to the bottom of what it was, make it better. Nothing was working, and they had just said, "We're just going to have to get used to this idea that this is your life now. We'll help you best manage it, but don't really know what else we can do."
Right.
And over the course of that year, I kind of really sort of reflected on, well, what is important to me. And walking is a privilege, using our legs is a privilege, but it was one I really wanted. Um, and I kind of reflected on things like mental health, how do we become resilient and strong? And when I went back for my appointment in the October of that year, so I'd been in a chair for several years, but went back in the October of that year where we'd sort of had to resign ourselves to the fact there was not a known autoimmune condition that this was, but we knew it was the immune system attacking, and we just had to kind of run with it. I think that can be very frustrating for people. You want a name for what you have.
Yeah, yeah.
People are quite shocked now when they say to me, "Well, what is it that you have?" And I say, "It doesn't have a name." And that can be really difficult. Yeah, because
Yeah,
people then can't identify what it is, but I just explain what it is. I'm like, it doesn't have a name, it affects the lengths of my bones. So so I went back for another scan to check, because I'd have regular bone scans, they'd light up like a Christmas tree, we'd be identifying where was worse. And I remember the consultant had this picture of a scan up on the screen, and I thought, that's really mean of him, because that looks like quite a healthy scan there, and like that's not very fair, like kick in the teeth. And he said to me, I don't know how to explain this because we've not done any other medication. He said, but you are stubborn and you are very headstrong, and that's the only explanation I can come to, that this is your latest scan.
Whoa.
And it took me a while from there to
Okay.
properly walk again. I had some setbacks where I tend to try and take control of stuff myself, and I didn't wait for the rehab physio, and then I was set back a bit. But ultimately, him saying that was like, okay, well then I will. And I'd always said to them throughout, "Oh, I'm going to run a marathon," and they were like, "Yeah, brilliant." And at that point, I said to him, "When will I run a marathon?" And he said, "You have to accept the fact that you might walk a bit, but you might never get any further than 5 kilometers." Or so I was
Wow.
like, okay, that's the benchmark, is it?
Marathon.
So I think it was like about 8 months after that, the following year, I ran my first 10K. I was like determined that this was going to be the thing.
Yeah.
And I like to say this, I'm not an extra, all humans are extra, have the capability to be extraordinary. It's a
Yeah.
choice that we have to push ourselves and to do these things. So I'm
Mhm.
not anything special because I did that, because each and every person on the planet, don't get me wrong, there are diseases that will mean, and disabilities that mean you won't be able to do that in the way that that is done. But there are ways that you can live your life to the fullest,
Mm.
embracing those elements
Mm.
to make it that way. So yeah, so that was kind of that element of stuff.
Do you believe in the power of positivity and the power of mindset and pushing through these barriers? Because if you'd have just listened to the doctors and accepted, okay, I'm never going to walk again, would you have even tried? So
No,
there then maybe separated you from somebody else in the same position, that you could go and do that because of the resilience, your mental resilience, and
yeah,
you made the decision, I am going to do
yeah,
this.
yeah,
And so you did. And
yeah.
I'm a great believer in the power of positivity and
I
over
think res-
stuff.
resilience is the key thing. I think as humans, if we choose to be resilient, to learn what it means for us as individuals to be resilient, and we accept that life is messy and it's going to go wrong at times, and there will be times that are harder, but we have a choice about how much we let that impact. We can feel what we need to feel at that time, but it doesn't mean that we can't move on to a more positive place. It gives you so much power to to have more control, even though you're embracing the messy life. You have more control, and I think that's a very powerful thing to be able to do that. But we all have that opportunity to do it, and we won't get it right straight away. It is a skill you need to learn. It's not
Yeah.
something we get taught. It's
Like woke up really early this morning, and I woke up. My bladder woke me up at like 4:20 this morning, kindly, and then I was awake from 5. So I just had this, this urge to write some stuff down, and it's titled, there is no such thing as a quick fix.
Yeah.
And I was writing all about like the kind of bits of my journey and how I always wanted stuff now and a quick fix. And when I wanted to lose weight, I had like weight loss pills and stuff like that. I reached the easiest, nearest thing,
Yeah.
and nothing is a quick fix. Comparing it to like business as well, and it's like to actually have sustainable health, weight, the
Yeah.
right weight, whatever that looks like for you, but more focusing on health and well-being rather than the actual weight, how much you
Yeah.
weigh.
Yeah.
You need to have resilience. You need to have sustainable consistency to,
Yeah.
to reach those goals. There isn't just an overnight process in recovery, in healing, in anything. And it's something that really kind of I was thinking about a lot this morning. I'm going to do some content on it
Yeah.
later on my pages. But
Yeah.
yeah, and it isn't it? And resilience was a key word that came up in this bit of writing,
Yeah.
and self-discipline.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like, as a society, we've become so used to everything being available on tap. If supermarkets said they were going to close on Sundays again, there would be absolute uproar. And I was kind of disappointed in the pandemic that they didn't close at least one day a week, because people needed a break. And we lived for many, many years with shops that closed at 5, 6 p.m. and
Yeah.
didn't open till the next morning. And we had more space and time. And I think my biggest piece of learning, and the last couple of years have been really like pivotal for a lot of us in being able to sit down and assess, what makes me happy. And actually, it's longer lasting if you've had to put effort into it, if it takes time, if it doesn't just happen. Because when we get these quick fixes, it's pleasure, not happiness, and pleasure doesn't last. It's a short-term thing. And actually, what we
Love
need to be
that.
looking for,
Well.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it is humans, we should be looking for happiness. And we've also become like very caught up in things bringing us happiness, and judging people on whether they're happy or not based on how many things we think they have. I like to thinking back to the start of the pandemic. I remember Sam Smith was called out for having posted a tweet where they explained that they were really struggling. And okay, there wasn't a massive amount of context to it, but people automatically assumed that because they are a celebrity and they have money, that they had no right to be unhappy. And actually, we all struggle in our individual ways. And like, the more we can accept that, the more likely we are to find happiness for ourselves.
That's a little bit of a bugbear of mine. Is just because you have this amount of money, these flash cars, and you're, what's seen by society to be beautiful and the
Yep.
perfect shape, that you don't have the right to have struggles, grief,
Yeah.
sadness, upset, jealousy, anger, all of the above.
Yeah.
Which
Absolutely.
brings us on to society's views of body image and what we want to really
Yep.
nitty gritty about is body neutrality.
Yeah. So, having been in a larger body for all of my adult life, and I'm still in a relatively larger body right now. And the thing that I found really damaging for me when I was kind of figuring out how I wanted to take care of myself was the emphasis was on fat loss itself. And you get so many things that would be advertising. Here's Sandra, she joined our program, she lost 5 stone in 3 months, and now she's the happiest she's ever been. And it gives the message that all of your happiness will be tied up in how you look. And obviously I tried all those different things and I was miserable, and it didn't fix anything, and then I'd just go back through that cycle. And I also really struggle So I have some background in human rights and disability rights, and I really struggle with the fact that the body positivity movement has shifted from where it was underrepresentation of particular body shapes, ethnicities, disabilities, and all the rest of it, and it's become this kind of poster thing for like saying, well, I love myself regardless of my size or shape or whatever.
Mhm.
And I understand that humans want to be able to say that,
Yeah.
but that's not about being positive about your body. And this thing of body confidence, where you're being told you should feel good in your body regardless of size. And 99.9% of humans, and this goes for people in smaller bodies as well as larger bodies, because it's all bodies is my thing. It's all bodies. I know people in smaller bodies who would love to have a slightly larger body. It's across
Mhm.
the board. The thing is, 99.9% of us have the parts of our body that we don't particularly like. We have parts of our body that we do like.
Mhm.
And our value as humans actually has nothing to do with our physical appearance whatsoever, because some of the most valuable humans that have graced this planet would not fit society's current standard for beauty. And
No.
yet they have contributed massively to society and how it's changed.
Mm.
So, body neutrality, in short, is this idea that we can hold a neutral view of our body. So, we accept that we will have bits we like, bits we don't like, and we don't allow that to determine how we take care of it. So
Uh-huh.
you can focus instead on appreciating what it can do. So thank you, heart, for beating all the time so that I can stay alive. Thank you,
Mm.
lungs, for breathing in and out. That's quite helpful. Thank you, legs, for taking me, like all the things that actually are a privilege in our bodies to do. And it sounds airy fairy, it's not particularly sexy. And so the industry isn't particularly interested in it as such, because it's not controversial. It's not going to, but ultimately, it can change people's lives.
Not
That
going to get Instagram likes.
No, exactly. I mean, I'm starting to, but it's a long game. But and it also shifts that focus from exercise and nutrition just being about body image,
Mm.
and
Mm.
allows us to think. Goes back to where we're talking about those quick fixes. It allows us to think of long-term good health. And if
Mm.
you ask people, do you want to be healthy when you're old? I can guarantee 100% of people would put their hand up. But if
Mhm.
you said to them, okay, that means you need to change your habits for the long term, they'd be like, oh, maybe not then.
Yeah.
And we just kind of need that shift to happen. So that's why I'm not going to shut up about it.
No,
I
don't.
I understand that it's a long term thing. I
Yeah.
use the example. I actually used it in my weekly email today, that the Disability Discrimination Act was passed in 1996. That's almost 30 years ago, and yet
Mm.
people with disabilities are still struggling to have their needs met, to be, to have the environment in which we live adapted for them to be able to live a full and happy life. So it's not going to happen overnight. But the
Mm.
more people start to not turn to these fat loss products,
Yeah.
these, this ethic of exercise, it is all about how you look, the
Mhm.
more we will see that shift into how do we take care of ourselves for the long term. And
Mm.
and the biggest part of that is understanding that you can love yourself regardless of how you feel about your body.
Yeah. I totally agree. I'm totally on the same page here. And it's, from my old mindset of, I call it like the skinny revolution when I was a little bit younger, because it was all about that size zero and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And I actually lost like 3 stone. And that was my goal. I need to be
yeah,
skinny. I need to be
yeah,
skinny, to be accepted.
yeah,
And stuff, and I would do, almost anything, and I actually really hurt myself,
yeah, yeah,
in the process,
yeah,
and I wasn't happy. I was starving. I was
yeah,
starving. And I was falling over, and I looked
yeah,
like grey and gaunt, but I was
yeah,
skinny, you
yeah,
know. But I'm a lot skinnier than I am now. I went down to like 6 stone.
yeah,
Um, yeah, ridiculous. But anyway, that's a whole nother story about my, my addict head and all that stuff. But
yeah,
the point is you need to look after yourself daily
yeah,
for long-term health,
yeah,
and shift the focus from what you look like, and that's it, how you feel inside,
yeah,
making those
absolutely.
small daily changes, exercise, nutrition, good sleep, good,
Yeah.
decent, non-toxic products.
Yeah.
What you're consuming from other people, what you're consuming on social media, they're all going to take a big, all contribute to your
Yeah,
overall
they do.
well-being. But if you do those small things every day, you're going to get that
Yeah.
long-term health benefits.
Yeah. And if
And
you take the focus off fat loss as the goal as well, you're actually more likely to stick at it. Like when I think for 20 years, like my entire focus was you can't eat this, you can't eat that, you've got to do this, got to do that, and you will lose weight. And in 3 years, it's, the overall thought is there is I would like to lose some weight because that's going to make me more healthy. But my focus has been, how do I enjoy moving? What makes me really happy? And I like to say, like, I don't weigh myself regularly. I get weighed at the hospital when I have checkups, and I get weighed for competitions if I'm competing in a competition where there are body weight categories. But like over that time, I've lost what I like to say an entire influencer. And like that is, and that will be ongoing, but it isn't my thing. And I'm not celebrating that as my, because there are so many bigger wins,
yeah.
in terms of like my confidence and, movement being more comfortable and all
Mhm.
the other things that come with it. And that's what we should be celebrating. It's one of the reasons that I have a real bugbear. So I think progress photos are fantastic for individuals because we'll often walk past a mirror and think, oh, I'll do it. I think I'm still the same as 3 years ago. It's a ridiculous thought and there's no fact behind it. But if
Mhm.
I have images that I can look back at, I can go, actually, you're being a bit of an idiot. That's not the case.
Mhm.
However, people in the industry are using them as a marker of whether or not they can provide people with a success. And
Mhm.
when we do it in that way, what we're essentially doing is fat shaming that person's former self. So
Yeah.
we're saying you were less of a person then, and now you are successful
Mhm.
because your body shape changed. And it doesn't acknowledge any of the other change that takes place. And it just shows you that physical representation.
I'm not a fan. Not a
No.
fan, not a fan of these weight loss things, whatsoever. I think it gives an awful message,
Yeah.
to, from my own experience. And, I have 4 children as well. And, what's that, like, message does that give
Yeah.
to them? Because they copy, don't they? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I copied my mum because she was always saying, "Oh, fat, fat," weighing herself all the time. So
Yeah.
I immediately thought, God, I can't ever be fat.
Yeah.
God,
Because she will. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And and then it's like now I've totally changed how I talk about stuff like that around my children.
Yeah.
And it's about celebrating what your body can do.
It
It's an
is.
amazing piece of machinery. Come
Yeah.
on.
And
It's
even if someone is on a fat loss journey as such, if they are working on that, there are things you can praise them for that aren't their appearance.
Mhm.
Oh, I heard you did a 5K run the other day. That's awesome. That's got nothing to do with how you look. But
Not
we need that shift in media as well, though, because every article you see about a famous person or whatever, here's so and so wearing X, Y, or Z, looking like X, Y, or Z, comments negative or positive. And we've got to draw the conversation away from that and actually,
Adele, wasn't it? When she lost all that weight, and then what's the other lady? I can't remember her name, but she is
Rebel
just the
Wilson. So I've got thoughts on both of those. So whether or not Adele's method of losing weight, I cannot comment
yeah.
exactly what it was. But that's the interesting thing. Nobody knows exactly how she did it because she hasn't actually made it a topic of conversation. So
Mm,
in that respect, I have a lot of respect for the fact that there is no like before, after. She's just Adele living
mm,
Adele's life.
mm,
Rebel Wilson really disappointed me last week
mm,
because her journey being public and showing that she was doing it through exercise, taking care of herself, fantastic. Finally,
yeah.
an example of someone who's in the limelight showing how it can be done. But she ruined it for me last week with the BAFTAs. I don't know if you saw it, but at the start of the BAFTAs, she put a before picture up of herself previously. And then she went on to be self deprecating with humor, saying she did it so she could get better jobs. And I understand that
Yeah.
we have to have a level of humor about it. We have to send up the fact that the industry is that messed up, that that is a marker of your value in that industry. But at the
Mm,
same time, that speech went out to the public and we're just reinforcing the narrative that your appearance is the bit that matters. And
Yeah.
it would have been far more powerful if she didn't acknowledge any change to her physical appearance at all.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds silly because people will be like, well, you have to say something. But
Yeah.
sometimes we can say more by saying nothing than we ever could by opening our mouths.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. And yeah, I was quite surprised really about that. And even if it was in humour, even
Yeah.
if it was meant like that, and as a kind of slur on the industry, but it wasn't. People's ears didn't receive it that way.
No.
They
No.
still would have absorbed it
Yeah.
as
And
it
I think
going to get you better jobs.
yeah. And some of that is, I think, like in social media and stuff, it's become very much about who can say the most controversial thing to get
Mm,
visibility. And we need to strip it back and think about what we're saying. And I say, I was having a conversation yesterday with a good friend about this. Whenever even if we're trying to debunk something, it should
mm,
always be with compassion for the people it might impact. If you're just saying it because you believe that's the right thing, and you don't care about the impact of your words, then that's just massaging your ego. That's just you going, look at me.
mm,
And it would have been more powerful for Rebel to set up something whereby she's working with the industry to get them to understand the impact that this
mm.
whole thing with body image is having. Do you know what I mean? There is so much more powerful and meaningful ways we can do this. So I felt it was a bit of a letdown. I did.
Yeah. So I used to work in the modelling industry, and where some of these like limited beliefs come from of what we should look like and everything. And I remember I was at one job, and they were like, oh, because I'd had two kids at this time, but I was very slim, and I was just doing like a shoot in London on the streets of, it's like an urban shoot, and they were like, oh no, you need to breathe in because we can see like your mum tum.
Yeah.
And then I was like, then that instantly then sparked me that I shouldn't have a mum tum,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's to be totally ashamed of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was barely there, but there was like, yeah, it's breathe in,
Yeah.
like tum,
And
but
like this, even this last week, we've had people like being realistic about what plus size modeling really is, like showing
yeah,
that they had these women out that actually they're quite normal size women to start with, and they give them the inserts for their hips and this, that, and the other, meaning that plus size women who are looking at those sites and going to buy clothes from there are feeling really rubbish about themselves because their bodies don't look perfectly shaped like that. And
why
in
does it
spite
even have to be called plus size?
I
Why
know, it's just a size.
size?
I
Why?
had I had an instant last week where I went into a big high street brand. I won't name them in case they sue us all. But I went in there and there was a jumper I really liked. And I looked up on the rack and I was like, extra small, 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 extra. And I went to a person, I said, have you got this out the back in a larger size?
Yeah.
Oh no, in that section of our shop, we only go up to like medium. And I said, and why is that? Oh, I don't know. I said, and what about the other side of the shop? Oh, well, we do have some. And I looked at several items in all areas of the shop, and only the small ones up to medium were out on the shop floor. And I said, I thought we're past this, like this idea that we have to just portray only the small clothes. And I would have looked awesome in that jumper if they'd made it in my size.
Yeah.
Like it was a nice, comfortable jumper. I don't know why I'm being denied that just because I don't fit that brand's ideal of what they want people to look like in their clothes. And that's just telling people again, we don't value you unless you fit our ideals.
Mhm. Exactly. Another thing is because I'm short, so I couldn't get
Yeah.
some jobs because I'm too short, and I'm like, that's just sizist now.
It is. Or like even down to feet. This is going to sound ridiculous, but I have really large feet for a woman, and I have really struggled over the years to find shoes because the shoe industry assumes that all women with large feet have wide feet, and I don't.
Yeah.
So I live in Vans and Converse and things like that because they are brands that I can buy in larger men's sizes and they will fit my feet. But like
Oh,
if I wanted to wear like nice sandals or anything, I'd have feet flapping around in the side because they just make them for wide feet. You don't get larger women's shoes for narrow feet. It's
that is
mad, isn't it? It's
very
all
simple.
round.
Yeah, it is. It is. And when you actually like delve deeper into it as well, it is. It's kind of like it's really insane.
Yeah,
Like
it's
the
ridiculous.
Um, and the amount of adverts and stuff that we're bombarded with, anti-aging,
Yeah.
all this No, that we're not allowed to get old. We're not allowed to look like we've had children. We're not
Yeah,
allowed to be bigger than so said size. We're not allowed to be too small because
yeah. And if we
people,
don't fit those things, we should feel bad about it.
yeah,
Why?
something wrong with us. Yeah.
No. So it's a very middle of the road opinion, but it's a really important opinion, and that's why it's not going to get heard that loudly, but
Yeah.
we'll get
And
there.
it's something that does need to be said louder for those at the back, and it does need
Yeah,
to be said over and over again.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, and hopefully we shall see some more change. And just like, yeah, I've been part of the body positivity, body acceptance, I prefer to call it,
yeah,
movement for quite some time, where I've had to have my own journey with my own body,
yeah,
through weight fluctuation, whether that's too low, too high, and I used
yeah,
to obsessively weigh myself 3 times a day.
yeah.
Um, and whether that's, with boobs going south, stretch marks,
Stuff happens.
just,
Yeah,
stuff that is very, very normal, whatever age you are.
yeah, yeah,
And it's not an age thing, it's a human body thing.
yeah.
These
We're
changes
human.
happen, at any age.
Yeah. I
Mm.
think it's interesting because some brands have been quite tokenistic in their approach to it. So then it just gets people angry. But there are brands out there that are starting to really meaningfully engage in this side of things and understand that if they want to reach everyone, they've got to be available to everyone. They've got to be, hitting those things so that people understand that they can relate to them. I
Mm.
know, like last was it last no week before last was International Women's Day, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I actually featured in a campaign for Bulldog Gear alongside other women. And I know that there weren't, when it comes to, there was no mention of why I would be any different. We were all just in a video.
Yeah.
And I think when you're doing it that way, it's much more powerful because you're not having to say why that video is a good video or why that person is in there. It was actually just about women in fitness and showing it just showed all different ones,
Yeah.
nothing said. And I think that's so important because if we're constantly just going, well, I'm here and I'm this size and look at me, it
Mm.
completely misses the point of what we're trying to say, how we're trying to embrace people. And acceptance and inclusivity often just means making it easy for someone to be a part of something without having to say out loud why that is.
Yeah. Yeah. Make things, inclusive is I hit the nail on the head, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
And not without saying it's inclusive.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah, just is.
yeah. Yeah. It's just
Wall.
accessible to everyone, and exercise is accessible to everyone. There are so many regressions of movements. There are so
Mm.
many different ways you can do things, and so many different types of exercise you can go and do that it is accessible for everyone. And we just need the industry as a whole to drift away from it being about body image and remember what fitness really is, and that is about long-term health.
Yeah. And there's so many ways to move your body. There's
Yeah,
so many ways to be healthy.
yeah,
And yeah, it's endless now, isn't it?
it
The
is. Yeah,
opportunities that there are to
yeah.
keep your body and your mind healthy. What ways do you like to keep your body healthy? Because it's not always about the gym. Everyone always thinks about fitness, relates it to the
Yeah.
gym or like to running or something. But um,
Yeah, so for years I was like, "Oh, I must run like all my friends," and I really hate running. Like, it's not a thing at all, and I'm really rubbish at it. And I do go and do it on occasion now because I like to push myself a little bit. Um, I do train in the gym, but that's because so when I first started training as part of a long-term effort for myself, it was discovered very quickly that I'm very strong. I wasn't shocked in that I'd carried around a whole extra human for 20 years, so it stood to reason that I should be strong in my body. And people were kind of pushing me, going, "Oh, you must compete." And I kind of was just like, "Well, hang on a minute. Why should I compete? Just because you can do something doesn't mean you have to be the best at it. I
mm,
actually just want to enjoy this for the long term." And I think it's a trap many people fall into. They take up exercise and they think they've then got to be the best at it. So
uh-huh.
I do train in a gym, but and I am classed as an endurance athlete, but I don't compete in events. I set up my own challenges that I then undertake, and I do that to raise money for charity. but yeah, so I do some daft stuff, probably that no one else would want to do anyway. But I love it and I enjoy it, and for me, it just makes me happy. So that's what I'm going to continue to do. Is just do my own thing.
I think that's a good message to put out there. Like, people who are watching and listening, if you are thinking, oh, I don't like exercise, I don't like running, I don't want to go to the gym because of whatever reason, there are so many different ways you can exercise. Walking is one of the best ways. Walking out in nature
Yeah,
is a great way to get your mind and your body healthy. I mean, personally, I do all sorts because I'm a very
yeah,
active person. I horse ride, I pole. I go to the gym, I paddleboard, I
yeah,
swim,
yeah,
and,
yeah,
but these are things that I can dip in and out of. I
yeah,
walk, climb trees, and then sometimes I'll like do calisthenics and stuff as well. It just like in yoga, it just depends what mood I'm
yeah,
in.
yeah,
There are so many different ways that you can move your body.
yeah,
Dancing is one of my favorites as well. Just
yeah,
literally putting on the music really loud and dance like no one's watching
yeah,
and just
yeah,
jump up and down and shake my body, and it moves all your energy around and makes you feel really good as
yeah,
well.
absolutely. Yeah.
Able to do that, of course, but if not, just shake the parts of your body that you
But that is important, is the enjoyment of it. That's what you should be thinking about when you're thinking about exercise. Think, will I enjoy this? And if you've got something you kind of enjoy, spice it up a bit. Think of ways to make it even more fun,
can.
and just, if you like going for a walk, but you're thinking, oh, but I'd like to somehow, make that a more difficult task, get a backpack, shove some weighted things in it, and then like increase how much you can carry on walks. It's all like there's so much you can do to
Mhm,
just like make it different.
mhm.
So I
Oh,
did my marathon last December. I did do the marathon finally, but I
ama
didn't run it, and I did it pulling a 45-kilo sled, and that's what I did. Yeah.
what? That's
What?
amazing.
Yeah, I wasn't.
I love
I
this.
I
Yeah,
wasn't joking when I say I like to do things differently, but
yeah, mix it up. That's
but
just
that was far more enjoyable than just running a marathon because everyone that does a marathon runs it. So I was just like, "Oh, how can I do it differently? Oh, I know what I'm going to do. Can't run, but I can walk, so I'm going to do this." And I had the best time.
yeah. And did you say that you raise money for charity?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, yeah.
What
So,
charity do you, work with?
so Sport in Mind is my one of choice because they do a lot around sport and supporting people with mental health, and that's
Mm,
something I think is so important. I think the other side of exercise is that it's fantastic for our mental health,
mhm.
and a really powerful tool in helping us get through tough times and just keeping a good balance as well. So I raise funds for them with it. I should be raising money for them again in May when I do my next challenge. Um, and yeah, I just enjoy every minute of it.
Brilliant. Have you got your next challenge lined
I
up?
have. Yep.
Can you still?
It it makes pulling a sled sound like a really easy task.
Brilliant.
So and even my friends in the fitness industry who are long-term fitness industry people, I've told it to them and they're just like, "What the hell are you doing?" So so in May I turn 44, so I head into my 45th year.
Mhm.
And so in order to celebrate that, and it's Mental Health Awareness Week in the middle of May,
Yeah.
so throughout the month of May, I will flip a tyre. So it's about an 80-kilo tyre, 45 kilometres. I will also do a movement called a farmer's carry, which is where you have some weight in each hand, and I will do that for 45 kilometres. I will ride an assault bike for 45 kilometres. I will do weighted vest run for 45 kilometres, and I will lift 45,000 kilos. So during the course of May, so from the 1st to the 31st, I will complete all those distances and all of that weight.
Right, for those that are listening rather than watching, I was putting some extremely funny faces through all of that, as if to say, "What the actual
Yeah,
F?" Wow. Okay. Fair play
yeah.
to you. Fair play to you.
Just their movements I enjoy. It has meaning to it for me, and it will kind of be a culmination of showing myself just what I'm capable of. And I want to continue to push the boundaries. There aren't women in their mid 40s undertaking these kind of things. So there should be, and
Yeah,
so
I think
that's me.
it's very inspiring. I think it's brilliant, and and that motivation, that self motivation, that it just goes to show what our minds and our bodies can do
Yep.
when we use them,
Yeah,
and
yeah. Never write them off.
And nothing comes easy. Nothing good
No,
comes easy, you know. And
no,
it's a really good message. And it's, you know, if you want something, get up off
do
your
it. Yeah.
arse and do it.
Yeah. And if you're struggling and if it's really hard to see how you can, then reach out to someone who can support you to do that. Like it's really important to not just fester and think, well, I'm never going to do it and again, because there are people out there who can support you to reach those
Yeah.
goals and to get there.
No,
And
and it's not
that's
an
really,
overnight process, like we kind of both mentioned earlier. And
yeah,
it does take resilience mentally, physically,
absolutely.
emotionally,
Yeah.
to reach these goals. But they are
And
achievable. You know,
they
people,
are,
they're living, breathing proof that, you know, goals are, recovery is achievable, goals are achievable, you know, miracles are achievable. And you need to have the right mindset, but you
yeah.
don't have to do it all at once. Baby steps.
No,
Sometimes
yeah,
you know what I mean? Just take
you
that
have
one.
to be prepared to start at the start, absolutely, and to accept that the start might be very little compared to what that overarching goal is that you have, but you will get there.
Yeah.
Like
And yeah.
if you'd said to me 3 years ago, you'll do that marathon and then you'll do more ridiculous stuff, I would have just been like, no, I won't. I can barely even do a sit up, you know.
Yeah.
So it changes. Like you just have to keep showing up.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And, you know, thanks for a great, inspiring conversation. And
Thank you.
I hope
Thank you
you
for having me.
listeners and watchers have really got something out of this. And always end the podcast with asking my magic 3 questions. Um, as the podcast is called That Inner Voice, it's all
Yeah.
about like what goes on in our minds and our hearts and our, you know, our internal dialogue. So, what does your inner voice say to you?
This is an interesting one. I think all too often we have very critical inner voices, and we've actually got to learn to teach them to be compassionate. So, my inner voice tells me not to be such an idiot at times and just kind of take a moment, just take just take a breath and realize where I've come from, what's going on. Because often when we're in it, amongst it, we forget. And it just reminds me that this is long term and just to
Mhm.
keep going and don't give up.
Yes. Yes. Good. Good one. And then what are you most excited about at the moment?
I get excited about a lot of stuff.
Yay!
I need to grow up, but I get very excited about all sorts. I
You'll
am
never
actually
grow up. It's a trap.
it is a trap. I
Yeah.
am really excited for May for the challenge for like getting through that and completing it. Um, I'm just excited for this year in general. I feel like I'm starting to find my feet with getting the message out there, and I'm excited to see where that goes
Mm,
over the course of this year.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. That's good to be excited about
Yeah.
everything.
Oh God, yeah.
And the third and final question is, what is the best bit of advice you've ever been given by somebody else?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Mm. There's something that's stuck with you that someone said to you.
So there's quite a few different ones. I think it's really hard to like nail it down. But one that I literally think about daily is just put one foot in front of the other and keep going. Because
Yeah.
it sounds like a really simple and silly thing, but actually, whenever you're going through something, if you just think, yeah, if I just keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep going, it'll be
Mhm.
all right. So that would be that would be the one.
I say that to myself often.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just keep moving. Just keep moving.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. And I'm going to put all your links and that in the
Thank
show
you.
notes that'll be below. Everybody, if you want to go and follow Bon, but you know, just briefly, where can people find you?
Mostly on Instagram. That's where I mostly hang out.
Yeah,
So you can find me on there. It's just Be More Bon on Instagram. That's where it's at.
be
And
more
yeah,
Bon, people.
I know.
Yes. Well, thank you so much.
That's all
And
right. Thanks for having me.
thanks for coming on that Invoice podcast. And don't forget to leave us a review. You know, get in the comments and we'll come back and reply to those. Let us know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe, share with your friends because you never know who this might help. And you will catch me again on another episode of That Invoice. See you all soon.